With us, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We start this morning, of course, back on the campaign trail with Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump's intensifying efforts to attract undecided voters in battleground states with now just 12 days to go.
Both candidates are stepping up their personal attacks against each other. Yesterday at a Pennsylvania town hall hosted by CNN, Harris called Mr. Trump a fascist. She's echoing the assessment of the former president's one-time chief of staff, John Kelly. He told the New York Times and The Atlantic that Mr. Trump repeatedly suggested he admired dictators and wished he had generals like Adolf Hitler's. Mr. Trump denies he made those comments. The former president was in Georgia yesterday, attending a rally hosted by the conservative group Turning Point Action. Both candidates are warning that the other cannot be trusted to lead.
I do believe that Donald Trump is unstable, increasingly unstable, and unfit to serve.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I also believe that the people who know him best on this subject should be trusted.
Our country is being destroyed and crippled by Kamala Harris, a person that got no votes. Therefore, she's a threat to democracy.
We've got a team standing by to talk about all this and so much more. We start things off with NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba and our senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. Good morning to both of you. Monica, let's start with you. So at this town hall, Vice President Harris really seized on these comments by Kelly. Tell us a little more about what she said and just her overall message at yesterday's event.
Yeah, and it came, Joe and Savannah, after she took the step of giving her own statement just specifically on the John Kelly comments from her residence in D.C. before leaving for Pennsylvania for that town hall. And here she continued to dial up some of her warnings about former President Trump, trying to use this and pitch this through the lens of the people who she says knew him best, of the people who were the guardrails when he was in office. Here's a little more of how she tried to make that case.
I think of it as he's just putting out a 911 call to the American people. Understand what could happen if Donald Trump were back in the White House. And this time, we must take very seriously those folks who knew him best.
Her big message here is also the idea that those people like former Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly or some of the others who were around him who've now come out and spoken out against him and are massive critics of Donald Trump won't be there for a second Trump administration. And so she's trying to highlight this idea that the potential for a second Trump term poses, in her words, more danger. And she's going to make that pitch on the Ellipse on Tuesday in this massive closing argument speech, where, again, it's notable location-wise that she's going to be speaking from the very site where Donald Trump spoke on January 6th, just right before the Capitol riot. Guys.
John, let's bring you in here and talk about what we're hearing lately from Trump. You have new reporting out this morning that's looking at this tension between the campaign there focusing on policy issues versus Mr. Trump himself, the candidate, going off script and launching these personal attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris. Is that something his campaign is worried about or frustrated by?
Good morning, Savannah. I'm not sure that they're terribly frustrated by it because I think they've anticipated for a long time. They've obviously seen Donald Trump on the world stage here for 10 years. They know that he's not great at sticking exactly to his message. What they are trying to do is keep him consistent with what the basic thrust has been, which is to talk about immigration, talk about inflation, talk about the wars overseas. And they do that because these are the issues that when you look at polls, the voters trust him more on than they trust Harris on. She, of course, has her own set of issues that people trust her on, including abortion and whether she's competent to do the job of president. But these are the ones Trump's folks want to stick to. He does always mention them, but often he trails off into other topics, including the personal invective against Kamala Harris that we've heard lately, and descriptions of the late golfer Arnold Palmer's equipment.
That's a good way to put it right there, John. All right, so Monica, let's look ahead to today. We understand Harris will be campaigning side by side with former President Obama. What can we expect there? How does she plan to use the former president best in these closing days?
Yeah, and really the last couple of weeks were all about trying to build out the persuasion arguments. That's why you saw her with former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney trying to make this pitch to some Republican or more moderate independent voters. Today, you're going to start to see a newer phase of the closing stretch and that closing argument that we were talking about. And she's going to enlist the party's biggest stars, former President Obama, who she will be with today in Georgia, alongside singer-songwriter Bruce Springsteen, who's going to lend his star power to this event as well. And then on Saturday, the vice president is going to be with former First Lady Michelle Obama. And these events are really meant to be moving into this mode of, okay, it's get out the vote time. It's time to really try to stress to people you have to make a plan to vote, vote early if you can, to try to really boost the turnout. So that's going to be the main message. While she still is going to talk about Donald Trump, and she's going to continue to play clips of him at his rallies, which is a new tool that she's used in the last couple of weeks. So expect that to continue. And then, of course, she's going to head to Texas tomorrow, which is significant because they're not necessarily looking to turn Texas blue, but it's about making this national argument that the vice president will focus on, which is all about reproductive freedom and abortion rights, which is a big part of her closing pitch as well. Joe and Savannah.
John, we're going to talk more about early voting in just a minute, but we did see states like North Carolina and Georgia set records on their first day of early voting. What could that mean for this election, that people really are heading to the polls before November 5th?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you, Savannah. I think after the election, we'll look back and say, oh, we should have known based on the early voting. I mean, what it tells me is that the two parties have done a pretty good job of maximizing the number of people that they can get to turn out early. Of course, the campaigns prefer people to vote early because that means the vote was banked. They're not going to forget to do it on Election Day. And it also means that the target group that the campaigns have to go after time and again, knocking on doors, making phone calls, gets that much smaller in terms of the people who've already voted. But, prognosticating based on early turnout is a tricky business.
All right, Monica, John, thank you both for kicking us off this hour. We appreciate it.
Well, let's dig into that more with early voting underway across the country. More than 26 million Americans, in fact, have already cast their ballots this morning.
That's according to data collected by Target Smart. Democrats make up 43% of those voters. 39% are Republicans.
NBC News reporter Gary Grumbach joins us now from Baltimore County, Maryland, where early voting kicks off today. It's also where one of the most expensive Senate races in the country is happening. Gary, so given Maryland's deep blue voting history in presidential elections, Kamala Harris sort of a guarantee here to win it, but the Senate race is much more competitive and also very important. Walk us through the candidates and why Republicans are actually pouring so much money into a blue state.
Hey there, Savannah. Polls have been open for about 8 minutes, and the sun is barely up. But as we can see here, dozens of people are already in line to vote at this early voting site in Baltimore County, just outside of the city of Baltimore. And as you're right, you're saying Donald Trump does have an uphill battle here in Maryland, to say the least. The last time a Republican won in Maryland for president was George H.W. Bush in 1988. But that's why all eyes here are on the much closer Senate race here between Angela Alsobrooks and former Governor Larry Hogan. Alsobrooks is the county executive of Prince George's County, one of the largest counties in the state, just outside of Washington, D.C., right across the Maryland border. Larry Hogan is the moderate Republican, two-time well-liked governor in the state. And the big story here is the money and how much money is being put into this race. When it comes to ad spending, both candidates have spent about $30 million between them and their allies when it comes to ads. So if you're watching local news in the D.C. area, in the Baltimore area, you don't need to be told this. You have seen ad after ad after ad, pro-Hogan, anti-Hogan, pro-Alsobrooks, anti-Alsobrooks. It has been nonstop here in the Baltimore area, guys.
And Gary, bottom line, this race is unlike any other Senate race in the country because Alsobrooks and Hogan are relying on just totally different strategies when it comes to dealing with their respective parties' nominees for president with the top of the ticket. Talk about how they're each handling that.
Yeah, Angela Alsobrooks, the Democrat, has been embraced by the Democratic establishment. We've seen Vice President Kamala Harris appear in ads for Alsobrooks. We've seen former President Barack Obama appear in those ads, and she's campaigning alongside some of the big names in Democratic politics. Larry Hogan is doing something a little bit different. He is trying to embrace Republicans without trying to embrace the leader of the Republican Party. He has said he will not vote for Donald Trump, but he did receive Donald Trump's endorsement. So that's something very unique about this race. Usually it doesn't go both ways like that. It's not usually a mutual situation like that. But he said he's not supportive of Donald Trump, and he, in fact, will not vote for him in November 5th. Guys.
I know it's early, literally in the morning, as well as early voting, and you're going to be out speaking with voters soon as people start to wake up and get out there. But just tell us what we know about what voters seem to care about. What are polls showing about the state of the race? What do we know at this point about what Maryland voters are thinking?
Well, I talked to some of them that were in line earlier, just waiting to get in. They said, if you're not first, you're last. So there's their take from there. But in terms of the issues that matter to them, it's those kitchen table issues, right? It's the issue of the economy. It's the issue of immigration. And it's here in Maryland specifically, it's the issue of abortion, because abortion has been such a big topic in this Senate race. Larry Hogan is running as what he calls a pro-choice Republican, trying to take that line and see how far it gets him in a blue state like Maryland. Angela Alsobrooks is responding to that, saying, don't be fooled by the bipartisanship because the Senate majority is at stake. Guys?
All right, Gary Grumbach in Maryland for us. Thank you so much.
The fight for the White House is not limited to campaign events. Some homeowners say they're caught in the middle and their front yards have become political battlegrounds. Some citizens are taking their civic duty a little too far by destroying political yard signs of the candidates they disagree with. We're going even further. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz has more on why some residents are now ramping up their home and their sign security.
They've been snatched from yards, burnt to pieces, and even rigged with booby traps. Political lawn signs for Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Donald Trump, and state and local candidates serving as a visual representation of political dividing lines and a lightning rod for some alarming incidents. In Tempe, Arizona, police arresting 60-year-old Jeffrey Michael Kelly for firing bullets into a Democratic National Committee office organizing for Harris on 3 separate occasions, and also for hanging multiple anti-Harris signs with white powder and razor blades attached.
Let me be clear. Justice does not have a political party. I want to speak directly to those who would consider using political violence or intimidation to disrupt our upcoming election. We will hold you accountable and use every resource available to us to bring you to justice.
In another critical battleground state, Wisconsin, police receiving several reports of stolen and vandalized signs. One letter left behind saying voting for Kamala Harris will lead to blood on your hands. Volunteers fielding complaints from supporters of both Harris and Trump.
We have people coming in nearly every day. I need new signs. Mine have been stolen, and more this year than in the past. My signs have been damaged.
I would guess it's 2 to 3 a day are telling us that they've had signs stolen. This election, there seems to be a lot more hesitancy to actually have people want to put a sign on their lawn.
Trump supporter Ben Ganther says he isn't taking any chances after he had one of his signs stolen and another sign cut through.
They didn't get the Trump sign this time because I had wrapped it in chicken wire. I'm not intimidated, but I just think they're desperate.
A resident in Leesburg, Virginia, who also took matters into his own hands, sparking panic after rigging his anti-Harris sign with tripwire and alarms. Some neighbors called authorities over concerns the devices may be explosives, but the sheriff's office and fire marshal assuring residents the devices were legal.
I'd like to find the tracker, John.
And others taking a high-tech approach. Missouri resident Laura McCaskill putting an Apple AirTag on her Harris Walls signs after she says thieves stole them 3 times.
Could you open the trunk of your vehicle and show us that it's not there?
Using the GPS to track down these young men and their mother, all as cameras rolled. Police confirming to NBC News they are investigating the incident.
Look at a video of this. This is where they all are.
I'm sorry, this is funny. Why don't you just take them all? Here you go, liberals.
With early voting picking up and tensions on the rise, both the sign thieves and their victims seem to agree on just one thing.
It's so stupid. Just go vote.
Just get out and vote on November 5th.
Wow, AirTags. All right, Liz, thank you for that report. The suspect who was arrested in Arizona now being held on 3 felony counts of acts of terrorism and 4 more counts related to the shootings. His bond was set at $500,000.
In the last few days, you may have heard of an unconventional effort to get out the vote. Tech mega billionaire Elon Musk's super PAC, America PAC, has organized a giveaway. I'm sure you've seen this, promising $1 million daily prizes to people in 7 swing states, chosen at random for signing a petition in support of First and Second Amendment rights. Here's the thing, though, that to sign the petition and enter the contest, contestants must be registered to vote, and federal law prohibits paying people to register to vote.
A source familiar with the matter tells us the Justice Department has sent a letter to the Tesla founder warning that the giveaway in battleground states may violate federal law. The letter came from a section of the department that handles election-related prosecutions.
NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian joins us for more on this. Ken, good morning. So I'm curious about this. It may break the law. Tell us about the questions of legality surrounding this lottery-style giveaway Musk is organizing, and what else is in this letter.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. Well, we haven't seen the letter, but it is kind of a common thing for the Justice Department to do to warn folks when they're coming up to the line on campaign finance law. But the thing about this is we've talked to a lot of legal experts, and there is not agreement about whether this particular arrangement is illegal. Most people think it's in a gray area. Some people think it does violate the statute. Others do not. It doesn't directly pay people to register to vote, obviously. But as you said, it makes entering this contest, this drawing for $1 million, contingent on being a registered voter in these swing states. The other wrinkle here, though, is that the deadline to register for the presidential race has now lapsed in many of those states. So the idea that you're inducing people to register with a monetary reward is not even valid anymore. So it's probably likely that no further action is going to ensue from this. But it is interesting that the Justice Department decided to weigh in and send that letter.
I mean, so yeah, Ken, Musk has already announced 4 winners. So you say there's probably no more action in addition to the letter. Could there be any more action the Justice Department takes against him if this keeps going?
There certainly could, in theory, although, remember, we're in the quiet period here. The Justice Department is not supposed to be taking action that could tend to affect the election. So if in the unlikely chance that they were contemplating criminal charges here, they would likely come after the election. There would be further investigation after the election. But Musk's PAC also changed the rules for this contest to sort of suggest that this person, whoever gets the $1 million, would actually be a spokesperson for the PAC. That may have been an attempt to respond to this letter, guys.
So Musk has really thrown his support behind former President Trump in recent weeks, both campaigning with him as well as alone for him. At the same time, he's promoting election misinformation, disinformation on his social media platform X. With the Justice Department taking a look at this giveaway, maybe let's say nothing more happens there. Could what he's doing on X get him in any trouble if he's kind of under the microscope in any way?
What's interesting about that, Savannah, is that the Justice Department in the prior administration or in prior years really leaned heavily on X when it was under different ownership to purge the platform of misinformation and disinformation. And then they got sued, and there was a big legal case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. They eventually won. The Supreme Court said the government could do that, but it's made the government a lot more careful about trying to lean on these social media platforms about misinformation. And Musk has made it clear he doesn't care what the government says. He has a free speech right to put whatever he wants on that platform as long as it's not illegal. So no, the answer is no. I don't think the Justice Department is in a position to take any further action. I think every American, though, should be cognizant of the fact that here you have the world's richest man pouring millions and hundreds of millions of dollars into the presidential race and also owning this major social media platform where he is promoting, in many cases, disinformation and conspiracy theories. But no, I don't think there's going to be any legal consequences from that, guys.
All right. Ken, thanks as always.
Some stormy weather's in the forecast for the Midwest, while those dry-tober conditions are gripping the Northeast still.
Meteorologist Angie Lassman is tracking all that and more. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. We just have a couple of thunderstorms across the Midwest. Yes, none that are going to really impact those in the Northeast. But how about those temperatures? A big difference with this cold front that we were watching work through this region here over the past 24 hours. We've got a big temperature drop for a lot of folks this morning. Temperatures into the 40s for Chicago. We've got mid-40s for Pittsburgh, 62 degrees in Philadelphia. And these numbers are going to feel a whole lot different than they did yesterday, especially as we get into the next couple of days. Where we're not going to feel much of a difference, where we're going to hold steady with summer-like temperatures, the middle of the country. Yesterday, we saw a lot of folks dealing with 90s. We saw the potential for records. Yesterday, we're going to see the potential once again today. Tulsa expected to hit 91 degrees. Notice how much warmer that is than normal. More than 20 degrees above where we should stand for this time of year. Low 70s is more like it for folks across this region. But instead, Shreveport Shreveport heads to 92 degrees. We've got upper 80s in Jackson, stretching into Birmingham. The Southeast in on this action as well, and it stretches up into portions of the Midwest too. As we look ahead, though, to later into the work week and into this weekend, your Friday, your Saturday, your Sunday, we'll see a slight dip in temperatures for some folks, specifically places like Detroit. We go to the low 60s on Friday, and then it's the upper 50s as we finish out our weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. Cincinnati, similar story, not quite as cool by the end of the weekend, but we still go from the upper 70s to the low 60s by the time Sunday rolls around. And we've got kind of a mixed bag for places like Cedar Rapids and Minneapolis, where we hang out in the upper 50s to low 60s. But notice what happens by Sunday. Temperatures warming back up in Minneapolis because we've got another round of some of these warmer than normal temperatures headed our way. Philadelphia, upper 60s to mid 60s on Friday. We get to the 70s on Saturday, and it's that roller coaster ride that we'll see by Sunday back into the 60s. So we've kind of got a whole lot of up and down going on with these temperatures. But here's what we're watching as we get into next week. That's Tuesday into Wednesday. We're going to go through the beginning half of our work week with another round of these kind of warmer than normal highs. We've got a high pressure that's going to cross the country, that leaving us dragging in some of that warmer air. So it'll be quiet, but it'll be warmer than normal for sure. As for some of those storms that we mentioned earlier, just a couple of them, really nothing all that impressive, but a few showers and thunderstorms that we'll track across the upper Midwest as we've got a storm system working its way to the east. We're most concerned for some of those stronger storms, places like Iowa and Missouri, but really it's just going to be maybe a few of these that produce some large hail. We're not looking at a severe weather outbreak of any kind. Notice all that rain that works across the Great Lakes, but then kind of fizzles out before it gets to the Northeast, where we could really use some rain. We're going to continue to see those dry conditions as this cold front doesn't really bring us a whole lot of relief for those drought conditions, but we will see some of that rain working into parts of Chicago, Detroit, and Wisconsin. Big picture look for your Friday, a lot of sunshine out there. We'll see some of those showers and storms, and then we keep the sunshine going, guys, really through the entire weekend. A whole lot of sunshine for folks across the country, and really only a couple of spots that are dealing with a chill in the air.
I have to say, I was in the Berkshires in the Hudson Valley the last few days, so thank you, because it was like the most gorgeous thing ever.
Remember this, for when it's February.
Was it warm?
And
it was nice. It was not didn't any different from here. It was nice and mild.
And the leaves
perfect
were pretty,
fall
I'm sure.
weather. It was gorgeous. The
well, you're welcome, Joe.
I was in Green Bay, Wisconsin, on the other hand, where I was freezing and people were in shorts, which I think is like your guys'
that's
jam.
the Midwest vibe.
That's about right.
Thanks, Angie.
Of course.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.